How's it going, everybody? It's Pilot Flame. We are back with another video, and today we're going to be taking a look at my Premier League predictions from last season that I did at the beginning of the season when the transfer window was still open. This was on August 14th. I did this, so there's still a few days left before the season started. And yeah, we're going to be running through what I picked for 20th all the way through first, my golden boot prediction and my points tally prediction in terms of what was keeping you safe and what was going to get you into the top four as well. I had a few bad choices in there, and this season coming up, what I'll do is I'll even go the one step further. I'll pick my golden boot winner, I'll pick my assist winner, I'll pick my manager of the season, and I'll pick like the awards as well. And I'll say my most improved team, most not improved team or whatever, or surprise team or whatever it may be. I'll make sure to do those, and I'll make sure to highlight them at the end once I've gone through all the teams on my next video. But today we're going to be reacting to how I made out in my predictions, and we'll see how good or bad I was for these predictions. If you haven't done so already, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and turn those notification bells on so that you can get the content as soon as it is readily available. Drop us a follow over on Twitter so you can keep up to date with all the different content that we post over there. And on Twitch, it's PilotFlame226. On those platforms, we will be doing preview and deadline streams as per normal over there next season for FPL. And we will be doing our FPL review show for the season and be announcing the winner of the Flames Recruit FPL League on either Thursday or Friday. I haven't decided as of yet, but make sure to turn the notifications on for those. Follow us over there so that you know when we go live for that. So without further ado, let's check out what I predicted at the beginning of last season. Alright, so here's my video that I posted up on YouTube. So without further ado, let's see what I said about the relegation teams. To look at potential teams that might be relegated in a prediction, you have to think how the teams that are getting promoted are going to do well in the current season. I think Leeds, for starters, will do quite well. I can easily see them finishing potentially close enough to the top half of the table. Okay. And I think that they're going to be quite good with the likes of Bamford up front. They re-signed, I believe it was Harrison on another deal, so he's going to be there next season. Dallas is somebody who's been looking quite good, and Dallas was very good. I think overall Bielsa's side is going to be looking quite strong, so I don't see them potentially being in the relegation zone. The two teams that I do, however, see potentially in the relegation zone, I think in 20th place will be Fulham. And I think that they just didn't really impress me in the game that they played versus Brentford. Both teams were very quite good bad. They kind of showed this in that game same things that they did, a couple seasons ago when they were in the Premier League themselves, kind of relying on Mitrovic. Mitrovic is either going to score you a brace or he's going to get sent off or get a yellow and just be super unproductive. And I think that type of style, if they try to come out and play some type of attacking football, kind of how Norwich did, it's going to be quite naive, and they could find themselves struggling. And that's true, yeah. Fulham, towards the latter half of the season, they were trying to still play their own way, and defensively, they just crumbled in the back half of games, and they did lose quite a lot of points. They didn't end up relying on Mitrovic. They were quite bad in the game versus Brentford, but managed to scrape through in that playoff final. But yeah, Fulham 20th. They end up coming 18th with 28 points. So just 29 points was enough to keep you safe. But not a bad prediction there. Still predicted one of the bottom three. So yeah, not terrible. But some good points about Leeds there. Them having some good players. Bielsa's has been making them play well. Dallas, Harrison, Bamford, three players we mentioned, all have done quite well this season. Harrison's been one of the players in the FPL that price per million, I think it is, based on his points per million, is the best player in like the whole game or something like that, which is quite good. So let's see where I predicted in 19th. Quite good. But getting back to the prediction here, I think that Fulham will finish 20th this season. I just don't see anything special about their team. Maybe they make a couple of signings and their team ends up, getting a little bit better. But I see them being one of the 3 teams to get relegated this season. You'd be correct. In 19th, I think we're going to put West Brom there. They did come second in the championship, but I think that they're just one of these teams historically that just seem to, they go up and then back down, and then they stay down for maybe a season or two, and then they come back up again. And they're just really defensive-minded team. That they've improved that since they've been in the championship, but it's a different type of league here in the Premier League. It's going to be a quick turnaround as well. The schedule's going to be a lot more jam-packed. and they're going to have to be dealing with that, as well as potential FA Cup draws and that sort of stuff as well, because that's going to be later on in the season. And it's true, West Brom, like, they couldn't really handle, the kind of congestion of the season. They sacked Slaven Bilic early as well. I didn't. That was another thing I forgot to do. Like, who was going to get sacked first this season, which I would definitely make sure to note down for next season. But yeah, Bilic getting sacked after they drew to Man City. They brought in Sam Allardyce, who's supposed to be the specialist at keeping teams up, and he has been. He's been successful in every other team that he's gone to keep them up from getting relegated, and they weren't successful. They were very defensive minded, very Sam Allardyce like, set pieces, long balls, nicking 1-0s, being solid defensively, relying on your goalkeeper and your defense to bail you out from difficult situations, and just hoping to get something from a set piece. That's basically what West Brom did for the majority of the season. With Bilic, they were getting kind of shredded apart in the early parts of the season. I mean, they played against Everton. Was the first one of the first 2 games, I think it was. I think it was the second game of the season, and they conceded 5 goals because they got a guy sent off, and Bilic was like, having it off with the ref and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was a bit all over the shop. Let's see what I predicted in 18th. Towards the very, very, very end of the season, and I think that an injury or two here, potentially a player leaving here or there, I think that Crystal Palace could end up getting relegated this season, and I think it's mainly due to the fact that their squad is getting up there in age.
It is,
and the likes of Zaha is looking to leave, so his
that
motivation
is, also true.
is not
He
there.
was.
He's been their talisman, and he seems to be somewhat injury prone now as well, picking up a couple of injuries which left him out of the squad for significant periods of time. And I think overall Palace, they just kind of it seems like they're trying to hope for 0-0 games and scraping by, and that's not going to work in the coming Premier League season. I mean, that's what Palace was trying to do initially. They were trying to just basically rely on Zaha and Eze to kind of just go and do everything for them. Then they integrated Benteke towards the latter third of the season, and it worked out quite well for them. They realized that they had an out ball to Benteke, someone who can hold the ball up, allow Zaha and Eze to run it behind and create chances that way. And they were looking a lot better. And I think that whoever comes in as Crystal Palace manager has basically a front three that they can definitely work off of. The midfield may need some refreshing. There's a lot of players out of contract in the midfield as well as in defense. But I think there are some very good young players. Eze, unfortunately, is going to be out for a long time. I think he had a very bad Achilles injury, so that could be kind of a problem for them going forward. So we'll have to see kind of how that one pans out. I think Crystal Palace, it depends on who comes in as manager, because Roy Hodgson has been keeping them afloat for the last 4 years, so we will see on that front. Let's see who I put in 17th. I think that the team that will just escape relegation will be Newcastle United, and my reasoning for this is because they had this takeover kind of looking, being like they're going to bring
relegation zone, or close to the relegation zone for quite a while.
Things.
Then they kind of pulled away when Fulham
done wonders this season. They have Almiron,
Steve Bruce has
done
wonders.
St. Maximin, playing quite well. And I think if, St. Maximin gets another one of those longer injuries, could be a bit of a bad sign for Newcastle. I think they won't get relegated this season, but I think they're just a team that's just trying to stay afloat at the moment, and I think it could be a bit of a rough season for the Magpies. I mean, I wasn't entirely wrong there. Basically, I said that, St. Maximin, if he gets injured for a long term, they could be in a bit of trouble. And that's kind of basically what happened. St. Maximin, Almiron, and Callum Wilson, who eventually came in, all had injuries for long periods, and they almost saw relegation staring them in the face. I don't think they were ever actually in the relegation zone. I think they got very, very close, but I don't think they were ever in it. Obviously early doors, technically everyone's in it. But I don't think once it came to crunch time, I don't think they got really close, but then they kind of separated themselves from Fulham. And to think that they finished, what did they finish? They finished 12th this season. I predict them 17th. They definitely finished on a good number of points as well. It wasn't even close. 29 points would have kept you safe the season, whereas in normal leagues, you're looking at 30, 35 points around there. So it definitely was a worse season for the bottom three. So Yeah, so far we've got a couple right and a couple kind of off. Crystal Palace was 4 places off, but not too bad there. Let's see who we put in 16th.
Moving on to 16th, I think that Aston Villa will improve slightly here.
Aston Villa?
And I think they'll go up to 16th place. Newcastle.
To be fair, they almost got relegated last season. They technically should have.
Area, I think.
If Hawkeye had worked.
Aston Villa kind of picked it up towards the end of the season.
They did.
And defensively, they were a lot stronger. Now, if they seem to, solidify that, that number 9 role for their team, because obviously Wesley
they did with Watkins.
Was out for a significant period of the season, and they hang on to Jack Grealish and Tyrone Mings, they could be doing quite well for themselves going into the next season. I think they'll probably just, scrape by just like Newcastle, and there'll be teams that'll be a lot worse than them. I can see them being on around the high 30s or low 40s in points.
Well, funny enough, Aston Villa ended up with 55 points on 11th, so I was definitely wrong there. But they did solve that number 9 problem. They ended up getting Ollie Watkins in. They also got in Matty Cash, who was quite good for them at right back. Mings did make mistakes, but Konza was also able to step in and play a good partner to him. Target's been quite solid all season. Martinez, I think, was the big kicker. I don't think I mentioned that as much. In terms of what goalkeeper they could potentially go out and get. I thought that Heaton may come back. I think he was still at the club for them at the time. I think he's now signed for United, I think, today, which is interesting. But that was probably the main kicker for them, to be honest. Them keeping Grealish was obviously a plus as well. So yeah, let's see who I put in 15th. Because I think they underperformed somewhat, was Brighton. I think they're going to be looking to get a couple of players in. They obviously have signed Adam Lallana as well, who's going to go hand in hand in their midfield. And I think with him playing first team football, they could, show his qualities there, potentially show himself. He did. He's just injured, unfortunately,
going into the Euros next year. And I think that Brighton are
Adam Lallana in the Euros, no
go
chance.
And attack. They expressed themselves, and they showed that they can take it to the likes of the the teams in the upper half of the table. Obviously, with their 2-1 win over Arsenal, showing the type of guile and the type of determination you need to kind of claw Leeds back. And I think that we'll see them being above the relegation zone by a significant amount of points. I think they'll probably be somewhere in the 40 to 45 point bracket, which will see them in a safe spot.
I was right on that front. I did say that they were able to claw some points and they were to get the points when they needed it most, which they did end up doing. Although it was just mainly due to the fact that West Brom and Fulham just couldn't keep it together, and Sheffield United was already down and out. And I said 40 to 45 points. They ended up on 41, and I was only 1 place off that. They finished 15th instead of, or they finished 16th instead of 15th, which I predicted. So quite close there actually. So pretty proud of myself on that one. Let's see who I plan on putting in 14th. Where are we at? 844 or 45.
14.
Oh my!
Now they were looking very good towards the end of the.
I put West Ham in 14.
End of the season. That was mainly because they were fighting for relegation, and you do basically everything in your power to make sure that doesn't happen.
At least I didn't put them in the relegation zone like some people.
Is it a team that doesn't lack motivation unless it's almost they need to really do it? I don't know. With Souček coming in, he was a good role player in the team and was getting forward and creating things. Antonio was just a new man, and I think that could help them be a little bit better than what they were last season. I think they'll be in and around this spot. They could probably be anywhere from 10th to 14th, to be honest.
10th to 14th. Well, they end up being 6th. Unfortunately, I was definitely wrong on that, so apologies to all the Hammers fans. West Ham were brilliant this season. I think personally David Moyes should have won Manager of the Year. They were touted to be potentially one of the teams to get relegated this season, gone in 2020, 2021. And luckily, I didn't put them in the relegation zone. I put Palace. We're definitely closer to it. But West Ham were excellent this season. They made astute signings. Soufal and Souček were magnificent. Rice has come from strength to strength. Just a one season, his improvement's been amazing. Antonio, although he's had his injury problems, they've managed to, bring in Lingard, Bowen, Fornals, these sorts of players that can kind of mesh together and kind of still allow for them to score goals. And then Dawson as well at the back, Ogbonna, Diop, Cresswell, and then just the solid rock in Fabianski in goal. And they're going to be a good team next year, and we'll see what Europa League does to them when they have to play European football. in the past with teams like Everton, Burnley, West Ham, these sorts of non-traditional, kind of the six, as it were, the expensive six or whatever you want to call them. Haven't fared well in Europa League, as it does take a little bit out of your preseason. So we will see on that front. So yeah, was definitely wrong with that one. So let's move into 13th place. Who did I put in 13th?
I'm actually going to put Everton here. Everton is much like West Ham,
Well,
where they
they
really
weren't
want
far
to
off.
be
They actually
into
ended up
that
10th,
7th,
which was,
8th, 9th bracket. But I think that there are some teams that just are probably going to outperform them overall. And I think Everton has kind of been quite disappointing throughout the majority of last season. Richarlison is very injury prone, and he's basically their key player. And when you leave the season and there's such a quick turnaround in terms of form, Dominic Calvert-Lewin hadn't scored in who knows how long, and it was quite disappointing. Whether they do something in the transfer market to kind of bolster their squad, they haven't done so yet as far as I know.
Which they did end up doing.
With the likes of Leighton Baines retiring, they need to fix that issue there. We're not sure when Mason Holgate will be back. So it could be a bit of an issue there for them. But I think both Everton and West Ham should be striving for the 7th, 8th, 9th bracket, or at least trying to vie for the top 6.
Well, funny you should say that, Mr. Pilot Flame. Everton ended up coming 10th, and West Ham ended up coming 6th. So you look a bit of a bit of a not knowing so much on that front. But yeah, Everton did address it in the transfer market. They had Luca Dean, who was at left back, who just filled in for Leighton Baines, was already at the club at the time, I believe, if I remember correctly. Also, they brought in the likes of James Rodriguez, Decore, and Alan. 3 fantastic signings. They just all needed to stay fit. And then Calvert-Lewin basically turned into Ancelotti's new Filippo Inzaghi, someone who's in the box, scoring headers, and doing quite well for himself. So yeah, I think it's definitely quite interesting on that front. We'll see how they progress next season. I think they need something extra. I'm not sure what that extra is. I think it's just somebody who has pace, honestly. I think it's somebody who's not like Richarlison typically. He doesn't have, he has pace, but it's not like pace with, kind of a threat in a sense. Richarlison's threat is he can get taken down for a free kick. I want somebody's threat to be a chance creation. Like if you have somebody who has just as good of a delivery as Digne out on the right-hand side, and you can go to a 4-2-3-1, and you have James in the 10, where he's probably better suited rather than being on the right because he got exposed on the right quite a lot. They have someone with pace out there who's a very good dribbler. Then you could see, problems for Everton. As an example, if Everton got Adama Traore, that would be fantastic. That would be a great signing for them. Someone with pace, someone who's good at tracking back, someone who's strong, who can cause problems, and is, getting better at his delivery as well. And, there's not many fullbacks that are going to be able to keep up with him. With James Rodriguez feeding him in behind, he could be a nightmare on the counter. Then you have basically a dual threat. They can't just look at Richarlison. They got to pay attention to Traore too. And you can kind of have Calvert-Lewin link play, laid off to James Rodriguez, who can spin the balls in behind for Richarlison. I think Traore could be a fantastic signing for them. If they were to go that with Nuno leaving, maybe Traore leaves, but yeah, wasn't too far off. 10th is where Everton ended up finishing on 59 points. So let's see who I predicted in 12th. So 11-10 is the next one.
United, I think they'll be,
Leeds,
a pretty good competitor. I
Only
think they'll
3
be
places
well
off again, so not terrible.
The drop zone, and I think they'll be, quite good overall this season. They play a very attractive style of football, but that could potentially burn them when they play against the tougher teams. So what they'll probably end up doing is beating everyone below them quite comfortably in most cases, vying for some of the 10th, 9th, 8th, 7th places, and then maybe struggling a little bit versus the teams in 6th and up. So Leeds actually ended up finishing 9th. I predicted them 12th, and they were quite good. There was times where Leeds, when they did go up against better opposition, like Manchester United, like Man City, they did get burnt for quite a lot of goals. Actually, Man City, they drew and then they won the second game. But United specifically, 6-2, they did get opened up, and they were quite vulnerable on set pieces in the earlier half or earlier
2/3, I would say, of the season, and they do tend to get beaten by teams that are just man for man better players. That can happen. They had a crazy shootout on the opening day of the season, 4-3 with Liverpool. That was absolutely nuts, and we knew we were in for a crazy season when that happened. And I think Leeds, one player here, one player there. If they could just take all their players right now and elevate them from, let's say, a 6.5, 7 out of 10 to a 7.5, 8 out of 10, they'll be miles better than what they are this season. And they were pretty good for a team coming up into the Premier League and hasn't been in the Premier League for, I think it was 16 or 17 years, something like that. If they can potentially get some upgrades in there, like Rafinha, astute signing, very good. Rodrigo, a fantastic signing as well. Harrison, if they can keep him next season, will be great as well. Dallas and Ayling, they'll be quite good. I think if they, can keep their center backs healthy, they can do quite well. Maybe someone in the, the midfield role to freshen things up a little bit. And they could definitely cause teams a whole lot of problems next season. Bielsa's style does take a lot out of you, but I think the Leeds players, I think there was a graph it was showing. It was basically like, if you can imagine just a normal graph, all the teams are normally clustered. If this is like the here, they're all clustered in around here for sprints, and Leeds is just way up off in the distance with just a crazy amount of sprints. Like for the rest of the other teams, they're just absolutely insane when it comes to just like distance covered. So yeah, wasn't too far off. I picked it 3 places off that one. So let's see what we predicted for 11th.
I think that's where we're going to put Sheffield United as well. We're going to put them in the 11th spot, and I think that they could see, some success again going into next season. They still didn't show that they can compete with the teams well above them. I think they're going to be solidifying themselves as a mid-table club.
No, they're going to be solidifying themselves in the championship.
Sanderberg coming in last season and kind of rotating him and Lundstrom. Their center backs.
Berg and Lundstrom were good until Berg and
Henderson, if they manage to keep him, will be quite significant for them. If they don't keep Dean Henderson, they could see themselves drop. I'm not sure.
That was the key thing there. That's one thing that I did predict, which was quite good. I said if they keep Dean Henderson, they'll still be good, but they didn't. Dean Henderson came back to Manchester United. They saw an Aaron Ramsdale, and I said that they would drop. I didn't say how much they would drop though, which is unfortunate. If I had said they got relegated, I would have been looking like a genius. But they did suffer. I think Ramsdale had a negative XG conceded, so basically he conceded more goals than what he should have, which is not good. Whereas Dean Henderson last season was the best goalkeeper XG conceded, as in he prevented the most XG in terms of shots faced, amount of goals he basically prevented. He was the best keeper in the league at that. So yeah, them losing Dean Henderson was a big reason as to why they probably got relegated, to be honest. And they had major injuries, season-ending injuries at the back as well, so that obviously didn't help. Now, moving on to the top 10, let's see who I put in 10th.
I go with the consistent Burnley.
Burnley.
They showed that they could be down to bare bones and they can still keep clean sheets and
pretty wrong here.
The best of them. And Nick Pope's going to be 5.5 million going into next season for FPL. Still going to be quite good. Burnley's always defense first. Tarkowski and me are some of the most solid defenders in the league, and they know how to basically run that system. The way Sean Dyche plays it is their 4-4-2 style of system with their more of a long ball approach. They like to basically funnel shots that make it easy for Pope to save. Rather than him going laterally in his goal, he goes horizontally.
They tried to do that, but they got burnt quite heavily.
His chest, it's low by his knees, or it's right at his face to where he can catch it. Rather than him having to make an acrobatic save, and the defenders defend in such a way where they make it so that they can only shoot down the middle of the goal without it being blocked. And I think Burnley will be good defensively going forward. They still need to, maybe re-sign a couple of players. Hanging on to Dwight McNeil would be good for them as well, as he's been quite good. Only 20 years of age, very good English talent.
So with Burnley, I got them completely wrong in terms of position, although they did pretty much play how Burnley want to play. However, I would say there'd be potential worries going into next season. Defensively, they've been losing their shape over the season quite heavily, and I think that they were trying to attack a little bit more. Maybe that was because they knew that they were safe and they could experiment with that. Sean Dyche has experimented with like 4-5-1s rather than the 4-4-2 system that he's gone with mostly. So it will be interesting to see what he does. I personally think that they may need, a refresh potentially. in some aspect, particularly in the in the central midfield areas. Maybe someone who's just like an out and out defensive midfielder. They can go to more of like a 4-2-3-1 where they have like a good structure. Someone who can actually get the ball, retain the ball, and have something a little bit different so that it's not just a one-trick pony and just you're kind of relying on your strikers to solely do everything. Because Sean Dyche, you know what his substitutions are going to be in the game. It's probably going to be 2 forwards, maybe 3 that are coming on or off. And then there's maybe a midfielder that comes off, or if somebody gets injured, then he saves it for that. But typically, his substitution is take off his 2 forwards, put it in the other 2, which is kind of a straightforward. He needs to mix it up a little bit, or eventually they could potentially see themselves relegated too. So let's look at what we got, 9th place. Southampton here, who's going to be in 9th place. They were quite good last season with Danny Ings being quite good, and I can see them doing even better this season as well. Danny Ings will... Well, you were quite wrong there, unfortunately. Southampton 15th. They were looking very good. Danny Ings was injury prone. Didn't make the England Euro squad. Not really much to say on Southampton, to be honest. I kind of got that one wrong. I do think that the next season, if they keep themselves fit, they can do quite well. I think they just need something in central midfield cover, maybe in case Romeu goes down, maybe an upgrade in that position potentially. And then maybe in the wide areas, something different from the likes of Armstrong and Walcott. They're more of like, kind of wider attackers. Maybe someone who can play an inside forward. Maybe they can shift to a 4-3-3 or something. Maybe just something a little bit different. We'll have to see. I think at center back they could also potentially improve. Maybe someone a little bit quicker and leave just Vestergaard as like the kind of taller, stronger aerial threat, and then have one who's a little bit better at playing the ball out from the back on the ground. Vestergaard's definitely very good at playing longer, raking passes. But yeah, Southampton definitely could have expected more. At least for the first half of the season, they were doing well. And in the second half, they just tailed off completely. So let's see who I put in 8th. In the 8th position, Wolves and that's 8th. Mainly due to the fact
Finished
that
13th.
They are
a very
system-driven based team as well.
They are.
They did not impress in the game in their quarterfinal versus Sevilla in the Europa League. That could be still weighing on their mind in the first couple of weeks that they go into the season. Maybe they see some trolls. Maybe they have to, deal with some stumbling blocks. And I think that they're just playing. They play really, really, really defensive. That's actually a key point there. I'm actually glad that I brought that up in my previous video. They're a system-driven based team, and system-driven based teams did struggle early on at the beginning of the season. Wolves struggled. United struggled. Just because of lack of preseason. City, a system-driven based team, struggled quite heavily. Didn't really have a preseason. Sheffield United definitely struggled as well. Another system-driven based team. Liverpool this season having their system basically torn apart with just the lack of available center backs, and Wolves did have to go over a stumbling block. It was the fact that their main goal scorer Raul Jimenez was injured for basically all of the season with the skull fracture that he suffered versus Arsenal. So that was probably the main stumbling block. It was 5 places off there, and I think had they had Jimenez, they would have probably been in the top half just alone on his goals. If he scores 15 goals in the Premier League season, which he's definitely capable of, I think they play a lot better. He's also someone who can actually hold the ball up, whereas more or less they kind of just rely on Traore to rip through 8 people, and hopefully he can do something. So let's see who I put in the Europa Conference League place in 7th. Leicester City, that dropped down out of the top 6. Now they're going to be playing Europa League football, and they did quite well at the at the very start of the season with the with their Madison and Pereira and Chilwell and these sorts of players. But there's interest for Soyuncu, potentially he could be leaving. You have Pereira, whose injury is still, I'm not sure if he's going to be fit for the start of the whole season too. Chilwell could be on his way to Chelsea.
Chilwell did go to Chelsea.
And, it seems like Brendan Rodgers, he kind of tinkers with his team too much. Like Iheanacho wasn't played as much as he should have been for me. He was doing quite well, especially in the Bournemouth game. He took Iheanacho off at halftime.
Yeah, just on that as well. I mean, it was just times where he just didn't favor Iheanacho, and then we saw when he came in and got a run of games, he was excellent. So I think Brendan Rodgers
may have had more points. Maybe he gets ahead of United if he plays Iheanacho from the start. Madison definitely suffered with injury as well. Pereira's injury didn't help them. They were actually the second most injury-prone team for the whole season, and they did go somewhat deep into Europa League as well. They got knocked out in the round of 16, I want to say 16 or yeah, something like that. They lost to Slavia Prague. It was either round of 16 or round of 8. Must have been the round of 16 because in the round of 8, Arsenal played Slavia Prague and then they played Villarreal. So yeah, a bit unfortunate for them. 5th versus 7th, not too much in that in terms of places. In terms of points, if you're looking at where basically 7th place it wasn't very far off, just 4 points behind. So again, quite close on that one, on their prediction. Let's see who I predicted in 6th place to a Europa League spot without having to worry about.
But Arsenal in 6th place.
Well, we ain't doing that again.
They're going to be tying down Aubameyang to another contract,
and that probably hurt them.
Really, really good for them.
It's not.
They brought in Willian for some more experience for the side because if you look at like their team overall, they have Nicola Pepe,
Willian to bring experience.
They have Reece Nelson, they have Martinelli, both teenagers. You have Saka, who's also a teenager as well. So they need that winger to come in and be experienced and kind of show them kind of the way things work and how to develop as a player. Willian,
I'm just shaking my head on that.
Is definitely that. On his day can be unplayable. He can take set pieces as well, although that was kind of tapered off towards the end of the season.
Oh yeah, he definitely tapered off on set pieces. He scored 1 all season. It was on the last day of the season, or second last day of the season, whenever it was. He scored 1 set piece, and we didn't hear from him after the first game of the season. William may have come in and helped the youngsters in training, and maybe Arteta did realize that. So I kind of predicted the foresight of the youngsters potentially coming into the team. Smith Rowe, Saka, these sorts of players. Martinelli at the very end of the season, were players that should have been. Martinelli was injured for quite a lot of the early stages of the season as well, with the injury that he suffered. I believe it was during the Europa League campaign, or the end of the season, before the stoppage, and then before the restart. I think he got re-injured again or something like that, and he was out for quite a while. But at least I did have the foresight to say the youngsters. Arsenal in 6th, though. They ended up coming 8th. With just 61 points. They actually had a decent end to the season. So, I think if Arsenal do play the youngsters, they can get themselves into a good position. But we'll see. Let's see who I put in 5th.
Is Spurs. And Spurs, they picked up Højbjerg, who's effectively a net of just 3 million.
Højbjerg was good value, but he did taper off as the season went on.
Midfielder. He's going to provide Mourinho exactly what he wants.
He did.
Someone who's going to be there, retain the ball, get it back. Do the kind of almost the Jordan Henderson type role, just kind of be a little bit of an energy ball in there and kind of retain possession for Spurs. With Harry Kane, firing at the end of the season and remaining fit, Heung-min Son looking quite bright, and the likes of Bergwijn kind of playing his role as well as Lucas, they could be quite good and quite, potent on the counter-attack. The only thing is I think they'll struggle with teams like Burnley, like Wolves if they plan on sitting in as well. Maybe Sheffield United could call.
Yeah, so Spurs definitely did have problems with teams that sat back until they got the likes of Gareth Bale involved or Ndombele, who they just stopped playing once Mourinho left, which is weird considering Mourinho was the one who didn't play him in the first place, and had him out in the park with cones during like the basically the lockdown and whatnot, doing drills, which was interesting. But yeah, Spurs definitely did struggle versus low blocks. Højbjerg did come in and was a very good functional player, was definitely a Mourinho type player, and did quite well. Kane and Son obviously linking up on the counterattack. That's exactly what they played under Mourinho. I wish I just predicted Mourinho was going to get sacked. That would have been a very good prediction. But yeah, Spurs 5th versus 7th. I got them and Leicester mixed around. But, it's still fairly close. I'm kind of somewhat happy with that prediction. Let's see who I predicted for the top 4.
Is going to be somewhat similar, but I think that it could be quite quite interesting. Could be another situation where it's a lot of teams fighting for that final position. But
on that, a lot of teams fighting for that final position, and basically was few teams fighting for final two positions in the top four. So it wasn't necessarily wrong. I think it was alluding to the fact that a lot of teams were fighting on the last day of the season, where it was like Chelsea, Leicester, and United were all fighting for third/fourth, and basically the same thing happened again. So maybe there'll be a repeat 3 times in a row.
In fourth place this season, we're gonna have Chelsea.
Hey, we got that right.
The likes of Timo Werner, picking up the likes of Hakim Ziyech, with Willian, going to Arsenal. I think that they will retain their top 4 place, playing in the Champions League as well. They played against Bayern Munich and got absolutely smacked, and that's mainly because their defense and their goalkeeper is terrible. And if they don't address that, they will still face the same issues, where they'll go up against teams that they should be beating, and they'll end up drawing or losing those games.
And that still has happened even when they've addressed the goalkeeper and centre back situation under Frank Lampard. That was happening. He wasn't getting the best out of their new signings, and then Tuchel came in and has done quite well. Although in recent games they've just barely scraped over the line. So I was quite fortunate to get that Chelsea would come fourth, but. Yeah, I think Chelsea could definitely get it together. I mean, if they're splashing the same kind of cash that they did last summer on their defense this summer, like if they bring in a center back, if they're playing a three center backs, if they bring in another astute center back, maybe a right-sided specific center back that can also play right back, and maybe a left-sided center back that can also play left back potentially, they could do quite well. And I think they may be looking at Rafael Varane as an example to come in there. So yeah, got that one right. Let's see who I predicted in third place.
If they do get Jadon Sancho, they will definitely retain this position.
They didn't get Jadon Sancho. I'm sorry, pilot.
Second and first. That is what United and Chelsea will be looking to do this season. Close the gap on City and Liverpool, who are definitely going to be the favorites for the league this season.
Well, they closed the gap.
If Mason Greenwood continues his form, he will be quite good. But United's problem has always been
kind of
1 or 2 injuries here and there, and the bench players just aren't good enough. We've seen that over in the Europa League as well. Just not as much productivity, and I think that it all stems from potential weaknesses from the bench, and maybe Ole not trusting his bench players to do so.
And if you watch United this season, you would know that is the case. Solskjaer just didn't trust his bench ever. There were times where he'd literally bring on Donny van der Beek and Amad Diallo or players like that were fringe players, and brought them on for like 2 minutes. Like when you need a goal, like do something, change it up. And then we look and see like Rashford's been playing with injury for 2 years. Maguire gets injured after not getting injured like ever. You have Lindelof out there playing with back problems constantly. You have Tuanzebe that he's played like 5 times this season, and every time he's been brilliant. It's just really, really weird that he needs to, a habit that he needs to get over and use the full depth of his squad. Telles is a good left back. Give him some games. Let Tuanzebe play. Van der Beek and Matic played versus Wolves. We basically played a whole bunch of youngsters, Mata, Matic, and Van der Beek, and we did really well versus a Wolves team that, they could have been down about Nuno leaving and that sort of stuff, but even so, it shows that Van der Beek can run the park, and Matic can, if you give him 4 weeks break every now and again, can do something, but it just shows that if we get a proper number 6 in, for United, you could have that sort of player like a Donny van der Beek, like an 8, or Paul Pogba in that position, and just run the show. So yeah, and Tuanzebe was brilliant in the game too. Let's see who we put in the top 2 spots. Here we go.
We'll see on that front. I think that Liverpool will just
close
come shy of Man City.
I did predict City right, though.
They'll come in second place. Their season that they had, the start that they had was absolutely insane. Started to taper off a little bit, but again, Liverpool is a system-driven based team. They were a high-intense team, and they kind of knew already. They didn't have to win a single game coming after lockdown, so I think
that's true.
That
but we did see signs of them tapering off even with their full team.
Downturn of form,
like the 7-2.
The way you end the season is sometimes how you start the season, and that could see them start off on the wrong foot.
Yep,
maybe they slip up a few points here and there. Maybe City does the exact same thing to them and just goes straight ahead and keeps going.
that's exactly what happened. City, both teams didn't start off quite well. It took City a little bit of time, but Liverpool just got decimated with injuries. Once City finally clicked into gear and Guardiola changed his team to where he had the fullbacks kind of tucking inside and overloading the midfield, he was able to get that momentum. And then they went on, what was it, like a 20-game run of wins or something crazy like that. And City did quite well. So Liverpool, we predicted second. They end up coming third, miraculously on the last day. City, we predicted first, got that one right as well. So let's see. The second last thing we have to look at is what did I predict for the points total for next season? I think 70 points will do it for you. 75 will be more than comfortable. But the likes of United and Chelsea, if Liverpool and City are getting 90 to 100 points or in that bracket, they should be looking to get around 80 to 85 just to kind of close that gap and keep pace with them. That's their goal this season, and maintain their Champions League spot. So yeah, basically it was 67 points would have got you top four this season, which is what Chelsea ended up getting, 1 point over Leicester City, who came fifth. Top six was 63 points, but West Ham ended up getting 65. But yes, so City, if they would have got anywhere, let's say City would have got 95 points, 75 points would have been more than enough to get you top four. United got, what did they end up with? 74. And they were, comfortably second by 5 points over Liverpool. But the gap is still slightly too big for my liking, and probably Chelsea's liking and Liverpool's liking. Funnily enough, when Liverpool ran away with the league last season, they were actually 1 point better off than City were this season over United, which is interesting. I know the last 3 seasons, City and Liverpool have actually got the same number of points, which is quite interesting. Lastly, I don't know where it is. I don't know if I said it in this video or not, but I couldn't find it. But I did predict that Timo Werner would win the Golden Boot, and I was completely wrong on that. So I'll hold my hands up and say, basically, if he would have scored all the goals that he was offside for, handballed, or just missed, he probably would have won the Golden Boot, to be honest. But yeah, that was probably the last prediction that would have. But make sure the next season I'll try to pick the Golden Boot winner, the assist winner. Who's going to be the big surprise? Who's going to be the big failure? Who's going to be the first manager to get sacked? I'll do stuff like that in the next prediction. So yeah, leave a comment down below as to what your predictions were, and maybe some predictions for next season as well. It's going to be interesting to see. We already have confirmed Watford and Norwich coming up, and then it's a shootout between Brentford and Swansea this weekend to see who makes it in the final spot for the Premier League next season. And that is going to do it for my reaction to my Premier League predictions for last season that has just been completed. If you haven't done so already, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and turn those notification bells on so that you can get the content as soon as it is readily available. And drop us a follow over on Twitter so you can keep up to date with all the different content that is going out on the channel, and when we go live over on Twitch, which is your follow, as well as we will be doing a Premier League review stream of how our season went and announcing the winner of the Flames Recruit League as well. And they will be in the description of every video from that video onwards for the rest of those videos, and until the end of next season when we do the review for the 2021-2022 FPL season. And we will be doing our United career mode. I just have to get that set up. Hopefully I can get it set up by the middle of next week. I have the capture card, and I just have to get it set up and tested, and then we'll do that, and maybe some watch alongs and that sort of stuff for the time being. We'll also be reacting to Southgate's final squad next week, Tuesday, as well, so keep tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and until the next one, take care.